Today on this video, we're going to be talking about walking topwater baits and 3 mistakes you want to avoid. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we've got to talk about walking baits because it's just such a great time to throw this type of topwater bait. Anytime in late October and all the way through like mid-November, man, that is one of my favorite times to throw this bait. And it's really a big deal out here on the Tennessee River system, but pretty much anywhere where the fish are feeding on shad, which is pretty much everywhere. This is the time of year that the fish are really feeding up hard before, their metabolism start really slowing down during the wintertime. And so they get really aggressive and they feed on top. In fact, if you really observe your local lake this time of year, you're going to notice a lot of fish schooling on the surface. And whenever you see that, it's probably a good bet that you can catch them on a walking bait. But anyways, there's 3 big mistakes that I wanted to share with you guys so you can avoid them when you fish walking baits. So let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, so the very first mistake that many people make, pretty much everybody makes it at some point in time, I make it still, is not changing out the hooks for quality, really super sharp premium hooks. Now, this is not, for every single bait stock out of the package. Like this one right here, I just took it out of the package yesterday, haven't changed out the hook because it's still got those saltwater version hooks on there. They're okay. You could catch fish on it for sure, and have somewhat success, but they're not even really, they're kind of gliding over my fingernail. They're not even really all that sticky. And the thing about fishing a walking bait is you're going to find that fish bat it around. It's amazing with 3 hooks or 2 treble hooks on these baits. You'd think that those fish would get instantly hooked, but they just don't, man. They don't hit it very well. It's almost like they're just trying to crash into it and kill it, so they can come around and just pick it off the surface. And so you need to have super sharp hooks with these baits. So again, I'm not telling you got to go spend a bunch of money on top of what you just spent for a topwater bait. You can go out, take a bait out of the package and fish it and catch fish on it. You're gonna miss some opportunities if you have just traditional stocked hooks on there, but I'm not telling you what to do, and definitely not telling you have to buy a certain brand of treble hook. I will, however, share with you the treble hooks that I like to trade out the stock hooks with in general. And I will admit, there's some topwater baits on the market that just come with really good hooks, but even those are going to get worn out. Some of them are going to start to bend a little bit and things like that. So you're eventually going to have to trade out your hooks regardless. It doesn't matter, how good the hooks are initially. But anyways, I like to use these TBL 930s from Hayabusa. These are my favorite. I use the ones that have the NRB coating. They're a little bit more kind of a silver, kind of a brushed look to it. But the NRB coating is kind of like it's kind of like a Teflon, is the way I explain it. So it makes the surface of the hook very slick and easy to penetrate through the mouth of the fish. So you got a really sharp hook, and then you've got that slippery, coating on it. So again, use whatever brand you want. This is what I prefer. I'll put the link in the description below as well. But the whole point is that it's a big mistake not to pay attention to how sharp your hooks are. This is a technique. It's not like a Texas rig or fishing a jig or something like that. These fish are not picking it up and starting to swallow this bait. They're generally batting around. And so you need to have hooks that they kind of stick them by themselves, without you even having to set the hook. So anyways, that is the first big mistake. The next big mistake that people make when fishing topwater baits like these is they get too complicated and convoluted with the color selection. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't carry a wide variety of different finishes with these baits. You know, I do because, you know, I feel like there's always going to be that one time I need one that's a bluegill color or something like that. But for this category of topwater baits right here, walking baits, it's all about imitating shad. I know a lot of you are going to be like, well, you know, I throw a black one every once in a while and have great success. That's great. I'm sure that you have great success. I'm not saying that you should not throw a black, you know, bait. But for those of you out there that are trying to kind of break through into this category of bait and figure out, you know, how, you know, what baits you need to start with and just gain some confidence, really just focus on shad patterns. And to reduce it down even more, focus on a kind of more bone or white colored spook or walking bait, and one that has very reflective sides. In fact, I don't have it here because it's in the rod box right now, but one of my absolute favorites is the Yozuri 3DB pencil. It's the 100 size is what I was using this week, and it's a great prism reflective finish that they've got with those things. And the reason why I say these two, the more opaque white or bone colors, are going to be great in low light conditions, you know, cloudy conditions, maybe it's raining. And then if you have bright sunny skies, if it's calm or sunny or calm or windy, you want something that has a reflective surface. The reflection off of something like this really is a great way to get strikes from fish when it's sunny. Having something that reflects, I think, is a really, really big deal when it comes to hard baits. Again, I'm not trying to discourage you from getting really fine-tuned and finding some colors that are a little bit, you know, off the beaten path and less used that are really effective for you. It's all about being creative in fishing, in my opinion. But in the beginning, as you're really getting your footing with certain techniques, I think that keeping it simple is super important. And so, you know, just getting too crazy with your color selection is a big mistake. All right, so the final mistake that I see people make with a walking bait is when they're working these baits, they keep it at a pretty consistent, kind of monotonous, you know, boring side to side walk the dog action with no variability or nuance to it. You know, they just kind of walk it back to the boat at the same exact pace. This is a big mistake. You can still catch fish doing that. So I'm not going to say, you know, don't just go do that. In fact, I will go ahead and do that. If I'm just trying to cover water and figure out where the fish are, I might work a bait the same, you know, the same speed at a pretty good clip, back and forth, you know, a moderately fast walk the dog action, just so I can cover water. But once I start getting a bite, you know, or get a bite or several bites in an area, that's when I want to really start experimenting with the retrieve. You know, go faster or go slower, work it a lot slower, or put a lot more pauses into it. You know, just yesterday I was out and was catching fish where I would just cast it out there, I'd work it for a few feet and then let it sit. And I ended up catching two of my biggest fish by just doing that, letting it sit there for a few seconds, and that's when they're hitting it. So you really need to adjust your retrieve, you know, all the time. You know, really experiment and try different things throughout the day. You're going to find on some days that they want it exactly the same way every single time, and that's fine. But you're also going to find a school of fish that, you know, every other fish wants something a little bit different. And so you want to be, you know, receptive to you know, the needs of individual fish. So just think about it. If you were this bait, you know, or a shad that the bass was preying on, would you just be, you know, going back and forth at a pretty, you know, monotonous, even pace? Or would you be going back and forth like crazy for a little bit, you run out of breath and you stop and you just kind of assess the situation, then you go a little bit more? You're gonna do a lot of different crazy stuff because you're in distress. So work your bait in that manner. I see too many people just work their topwater walking baits at one pace, one cadence, and that's it. So that is a big mistake. But anyways, guys, just wanted to share some of these mistakes with you. This is a really fun category of bait to fish. It's one of my favorite topwater categories because you can just cover a ton of water, and it's also just really, really good this time of year. So I'm gonna put some links to the products that I talked about and some of my favorite walking baits in the description below. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great day. I'm gonna see you out in the water. Make sure you trust the process.